Equally Yoked Show. Get yoked for free. Count it all joy. Charles is back online. The Equally Yoked Show. Get yoked for free. Count it all joy. Charles is back online. The Equally Yoked Show. Get yoked for free. Count it all joy. Charles is back online. The Equally Yoked Show. Get yoked for free.
Welcome back to the broadcast. We have got some tragedy, of course, but we've got some news nonetheless to cover because what we're witnessing around Minnesota is growing to a big, fat, ugly spiritual warfare that is essentially manifesting into the natural. Now, of course, we're going to be looking at the information concerning what happened in Minnesota. We're going to be looking at some of the footage, obviously not all of the footage, because some of that is not available to view on YouTube. And so we're going to watch what unfolded in Minnesota today, earlier this morning, actually. And so there is a lot of chaos. There's a fog of war concerning everything here. And we are hoping to break this all down for you to give you some clarity, to give you some perspective. And of course, we're going to be looking at the narrative of everything, with some of the news reports that have reported this at the start, some information that we're getting, and of course, more information that will come in the coming days, weeks, or even months following this tragedy. Now, I say tragedy because, yes, it is a death of a person, somebody who I want to say, you know what, I'll get to my thoughts later concerning this because I think I need to build this out a little bit more. So, of course, we're going to be looking at some posts. We're going to be looking at some video feed of Secretary Kristi Noem concerning this. She mentions this briefly in a press conference, and because of what is brewing, not only within Minnesota, but of course what is brewing when it comes to weather. So just to start, I want to welcome you guys to the show. This is the Equally Yoked Show. Honored to be with you today, and we are covering what has happened and unfolded in Minnesota with the shooting of another citizen of Minnesota, of another American citizen, nonetheless. And we are here to provide you with some of that information. Now, email me, freedom@equallyyokeshow.com. Share with me your thoughts. The email is pinned at the top. You'll see it on the chat. And please interact with me in the chat so we can get an idea, so I can get an idea as to what you guys are thinking concerning this situation. So as we begin to play this video, I want to know your thoughts. Share them in the chat. Let's keep it clean. If you guys have debate topics, debate points concerning this, let's tackle them as we go through the show. However, let's play this video. I do need to grab something for a moment. You know what? I'm just going to let it go.
I do want to address the tragic situation that we saw in Minneapolis today that unfolded on the streets. It occurred with DHS law enforcement as they carried out their lawful duties to keep Americans safe in the threat of criminal illegal aliens in this country. At 9:05 a.m. Central Time, the Department of Homeland Security law enforcement officials and officers were conducting targeted operations in Minneapolis against an illegal alien whose criminal history included domestic assault with intentionally inflicting bodily harm, disorderly conduct, and driving without a valid license. An individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The officers attempted to disarm this individual, but the armed suspect reacted violently. Fearing for his life and for the lives of his fellow officers around him, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics were on the scene immediately and attempted to deliver medical aid to the subject, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 magazines with ammunition in them that held dozens of rounds. He also had no ID. This looks like a situation where an individual arrived at this scene to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to kill law enforcement.
Now, we're going to get into some of the news that is coming out of Truth Social, some of the posts coming out of Truth Social from Donald Trump concerning this matter. We're also looking at some of the police, the law enforcement of Minnesota, what their comments are concerning this, some of what Tim Walz has said concerning this. And so here we're going to get into the comments, the thoughts concerning this. I do want to mention them right at the front because there's just so much here. I have so many thoughts that I want to lay out for you guys, but I think I need to continue with what is actually being said. We're going to read some articles and we're going to go for it. So if you guys are just joining in the podcast, please consider liking the show, subscribe, and email me your thoughts, freedom@equallyyokeshow.com. If you want to discuss this further offline or even during the show, I will be reading them. And we also have comments like this, and we're going to address those in a moment by some saying it was murder, plain and simple, or even it was a public execution. So we're going to continue this video, and we're going to just go through the line here on what the media is saying and where the truth lies in all of this. We're going to be looking at all of that.
Hundreds of protesters then showed up at the scene. They began to obstruct and to assault law enforcement officers. We saw objects being thrown at them, including ice and other objects, and a rampant assault began, and even an HSI officer agent's finger was bitten off. Crowd control measures were deployed to bring safety to the public and to law enforcement at the scene. And once again, I want to remind everybody that this situation and this tragedy did not have to happen.
Now, what I must say is with everything that is happening here, before I continue on with any other videos, is that this is not normal. This is a very dark spiritual issue here concerning what is happening in Minnesota. Now, what ICE is doing is they are targeting the individuals who have broken the law, individuals who are violent and who have committed crimes. Now, Donald Trump said this during the press briefing, where he basically spoke about who they're targeting, who they're after. He says he's telling people to have a little bit of heart because they understand that people came over and they're trying to make a better life for themselves, where they're working on farms, they're getting jobs, they're contributing to the economy, and they're, not necessarily violent. However, they still broke the law. He mentions that sort of caveat, however they should get out, that he still mentions that we're focusing more on the violent criminals that came into the country. And so here's how the AP is reporting it so far. I think this is important to note. It says Alex Jeffrey Pretty, I think that's how you pronounce his name, 37, was an avid outdoorsman who enjoyed getting in adventures with Jewel, his beloved Cthulhu leopard dog, who also recently died. He worked for the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs and had participated in protests following the January 7 killing of Renee Good by an immigrant and customs officer. He cared about people deeply, and he was very upset, this is a quote, and was with what was happening in Minneapolis and throughout the United States with ICE, as millions of other people are upset, said Michael Pretty, his father. Quote, he thought it was terrible, kidnapping children, just grabbing people off the streets. He cared about those people and he knew it was wrong, so he did participate in protests. So there's already the acknowledgement of the fact that he was involved in these protests, and you're going to see from his ex-wife talking about that, which she doesn't want to be named here on the article. She wants to stay anonymous, but she says that he was involved in these protests since George Floyd, and whether he was involved in any others following that, we don't know any of that information just yet. So, of course, the internet will do its research and it will get all that information as to put it out there for transparency. So, his comments there are very, very particular. We kind of get an idea as to the mindset of what Alex is thinking, as he's talking to his father about these issues. He thought it was terrible. The kidnapping of children, grabbing people off of the streets. These are terms that have been used by the Democrats, and he is a Democrat, used by the Democrats in order to create fear within the American people, in order to create fear within those who might possibly be detained in the sense of illegals who don't have any type of, temporary documentation here in order to be in America. And so this sparks fear. When we clearly heard the administration say, look, we're after the criminals, the violent criminals who have, we can go down the list, but YouTube might censor this video. So when it comes to Alex and his mindset, when the quote says here, kidnapping children, when DHS clearly said at the beginning, as soon as all this information came out, that they did not kidnap children, or they did not capture this 5-year-old, detain this 5-year-old, what did they do? They set him up. They made sure he was taken care of. They took him to a McDonald's, and he's also with his family. They're also not just grabbing people off of the streets. What they are doing, however, with these agitators is they are trying to shut them down in the sense that you see them putting phones in these ICE officers' faces. They're impeding law enforcement. We saw this with Renee Good. We're seeing this with many others. And so when it comes to just grabbing people off of the streets, we're also seeing the fact that they are targeting specific individuals who have broken the law, individuals who are indeed with charges that are, they're escaping the law in their own country. They have fled from in the case of Venezuela, what we saw was an emptying of their prisons into America. We saw the gangs that were taking over communities. We saw so much of that stuff during the Biden administration. And so when we're putting America first, what is happening? When people are saying, put America first, we're putting America first, and then violence happens. And so what we have here from Secretary Noem is she's detailing some of the stuff that happened. Now, when we go to the Truth Socials, let's take a look at some of the Truth Socials, and hopefully YouTube doesn't flag this video for this. But let's take a look here for a moment. This is actually something that he says first and foremost. He says, this is the gunman's gun. Now, here's the picture if you haven't seen it. An extra magazine, semi-automatic, with 2 additional full magazines and ready to go. He says, what is this? What is that all about? Where are the local police? Why weren't they allowed to protect ICE officers? The mayor and the governor called them off. It is stated that many of these police are not allowed to do their job, that ICE had to protect themselves. Not an easy thing to do. Why does Ilhan Omar have $34 million in her account? And where are the tens of billions of dollars that have been stolen from the once great state of Minnesota? Why, we are there because of massive monetary fraud with billions of dollars missing. Now, Trump is reminding people why ICE is there. Remember, he also revoked the temporary protected status of Somalians. And I'm going to get to your comments in a bit, so I appreciate you guys for joining the chat, joining in this conversation. Email me, freedom@equallyyokeshow.com, so we can get your thoughts offline in the case that you want to share some of that stuff. Subscribe to the show. Let's continue on here. So it says, not an easy thing to do. Talks about Ilhan Omar, talks about the monetary fraud, the billions of dollars missing, and illegal criminals that were allowed to infiltrate the state through the Democrats' open border policy. We want the money back, and we want it back now. The fraudsters who stole the money are going to jail, where they belong. There's no different than a really big bank robbery. Much of what you're witnessing is a cover-up for this theft and fraud. The mayor and the governor are inciting insurrections with their pompous, dangerous, and arrogant rhetoric. Instead, these sanctimonious political fools should be looking for the billions of dollars that have been stolen from the people of Minnesota and the United States of America. Let our ICE patriots do their job. 12,000 illegal alien criminals, many of them violent, have been arrested and taken out of Minnesota. If they were still there, you would see something far worse than you are witnessing today. So, first and foremost, we have the mayor and the governor who are, as you see by the thumbnail, I thought I got a little creative with it. They're hiding behind a wooden fence, witnessing all of the tragedy that is happening right under their noses. Now, they're allowing it to happen. They're not toning down their rhetoric. They're not toning down anything that they're saying. Instead, they're saying, ICE, get out. And you're seeing these protests of people saying, ICE out now. Okay, this rhetoric that they continue to share is only sparking the violence more, instead of saying, do not impede law enforcement. And also allowing the police officers to do their job in order for these ICE agents to conduct their job. And so for people that are saying the streets were peaceful, the streets were not peaceful. Not at all. Okay, when they're blowing whistles, when they're using their bullhorns, when they're sticking their phones in these ICE agents' faces, when they're impeding law enforcement, none of this is peaceful. We're seeing barricades with trash cans. We're seeing barricades throughout the streets in order to prevent law enforcement to do their job. ICE agents, I should say, but they are still law enforcement. So when we continue on here, he says this: it is actually possible that the total amount of money stolen over the years by corrupt politicians and fraudsters from Minnesota will exceed $100 billion in any event. Whether it is or isn't, the theft, incompetence, and fraud is massive. Sadly, whatever numbers we find, California and the Democrat-run states will be far worse. Stay tuned, President Donald J. Trump. Now, I'm going to go to another image here, and honestly, I don't even know if I can show this to you, but it is images that are circulating online of a rioter who attacked law enforcement and bit one of the HSI officer's finger. So you can see in the image, he actually doesn't have his finger. Now, again, I don't know if I can show this video, or it's not even a video, it's an image of an ICE officer holding his finger, holding his hand, and his ring finger is gone. And then in another image, you see a capsule that has his finger that is missing. This is, first of all, at what point did the Democrats begin to say, enough is enough? At what point do these kind of actions actually make sense? At what point does this become like animals here? They're biting fingers off. Where does this go from here? This is deeply spiritual, and it is disgusting what will happen from here on out. So I think the DOJ needs to step up first and foremost. Prosecutions need to happen. The law needs to be enforced. Because we're seeing all of this talk about arrests are coming, specifically when it comes to the church in Minnesota. Now, just for a brief moment, I'm going to show the photo. Hopefully this doesn't get taken down so you can see what exactly is this looking like. I'm going to take away because I don't know what YouTube's going to do with that. However, but here's what the Democrats are going to do with this information. It's a political game and they will not care. They do not care about the casualties as a result of their fight for quote unquote democracy. So let's use Marx as an example. This is Marx, Karl Marx, perfect example as to why this is sort of beginning to happen. Now, I think, of course, this is all inspired, and we'll get into that in a moment. Now, this might not seem like the communist revolution that you're going to hear displayed, but what the Democrats are seeking to do is to sow confusion. They're looking to sow just all of this rhetoric in order to reap what they hope to obtain. And so before I get there in a moment, I'm going to use that some of Karl Marx in a moment here, but let's look at Tim Walz. He actually activates the National Guard. So let's look at this clip here from the New York Post, just before we continue on with what we're talking about concerning Karl Marx and why it's important. It just came to mind before going live. Here we go.
Ernesto with the New York Times. Have you activated the National Guard? I noted that Sheriff Witt has requested for additional assistance. Can you tell us whether they're going to be playing a role in keeping the peace?
Yes, the answer is yes, we have, as we said last week, and we staged those troops. I'll have General Menke talk about where they're at, and again, use this as an opportunity to stress to Minnesotans the frustration you have, and as you saw this, they killed a man, created chaos, pushed down protesters, threw gas indiscriminately, and then left the scene, and then we're left to clean up. I understand the anger. I understand trying to parse who were the law enforcement on the scene when you got...
And by the way, Mad Rush, I actually agree with you by saying democracy does nothing but divide and turn zombie party to act like toddlers. I think you're right. Now you look at the documents that we have, the founding documents to talk about in section or Article 4, Section 4, that mentions that that every state will be a republic. We've looked at this before. Let me see if this is actually correct, where we had looked at this on previous live streams. I'm going to get to that in a moment as to where this is written so that you can also fact check it for yourself. And so concerning Article 4 of the U.S. Constitution, it says the United States shall guarantee that every state in this union a republican form of government, not a democracy. Where we only see democracy is actually in Karl Marx's letters. So let's continue on here.
There after a man was killed is difficult for the folks who are out there, but I can't stress enough our goal, and I'll have General Menke talk about what the role of these Guard troops are in conjunction with incredible work from the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, from mutual aid across, and of course the State Patrol, of trying to get to the point where what we're saying is we can handle this and Minnesotans can express their First Amendment rights and have our folks on the streets and get these people out of here. And so, John, if you want to talk a little bit, but the answer is yes, there's activated. He can talk to you about numbers.
And so by the way, with some of the comments here, I think it's actually great that some of you have a level-headed, thought process concerning all of this. Of course, we are a constitutional republic. Yes, amen. And we also have to look at one of these comments that says Democrats are sheep. They're essentially being led to the slaughter. You look at the reality of what is happening in Minnesota, that is what it is. Guys, like the show if you haven't already liked the show. Let's get this show out there so we can get more people and more of their thoughts concerning this issue and concerning this matter. If you haven't already liked, please do so now so we can get this show out to more folks. But email me your thoughts, freedomandequallyyokeshow.com. We're going to continue on here in what is being said in the media. So, of course, you saw that Tim Walz activated the National Guard. But here's another thing that he has said concerning this. There's a quote here that says, "We will have the last word. Minnesota will have the last word." So here we go. Let's look at this this news broadcast here for a moment.
We got to dip into this presser with Governor Walz here.
Bob Jacobson, to update the situation, joined here by Hennepin County Sheriff Witt, State Patrol Colonel, and General Menke, the Adjutant General of the Minnesota National Guard. Well, as I said last week, this federal occupation of Minnesota long ago stopped being a matter of immigration enforcement. It's a campaign of organized brutality against the people of our state.
Now, also, let me remind you of some of the rhetoric that they continue to use as well. They call this public executions. They call this an occupation. They are there to enforce the federal law. Yet the Democrats are going to twist the narrative in order for them to indoctrinate the American people who don't understand what is actually happening and the reality behind all of this.
Today, that campaign claimed another life. I've seen the videos from several angles, and it's sickening.
And by the way, I also want to highlight Crumb Chef, or Crumb Chief, actually, I think that's your name. It says Obama was deporter-in-chief. This was his title. Did not have this mess, not stopping people in the streets if they were brown, not running around mob handed banging on the doors, trying to gain access with no warrant. Look, we looked at videos also concerning this, where we saw that Barack Obama said in his video, in his interview to Telemundo, or Telemundo, if you got that nice little accent there, or not even accent, but the proper pronunciation in Spanish, is he said he's there to enforce the law. That's what he's there to do. And so when you have the poster child, the once poster child of the Democratic Party, which was Barack Obama, Barack Hussein Obama, he said that he was there to enforce the laws. This is what his position was concerning these deportations. He was then called deporter-in-chief. So let's continue on with Tim Walz here.
But I have a strong statement here for our federal government. Minnesota's justice system will have the last word on this. It must have the last word. As I told the White House in no uncertain terms this morning, the federal government cannot be trusted to lead this investigation. The state will handle it, period. Let me say something else, and this is critically important. All of us understand what happened this morning and the tragedy of it, and my deepest sympathies to the family of a 37-year-old Minnesota resident, a lawful firearm concealed permit carrier, something that I've heard been lectured to by Republicans for decades.
By the way, mind you, they're going to emphasize this point that he was a lawful carrier. But this is the party, let me remind you, this is the party that is anti-gun. They want to remove the gun laws. They want to restrict and completely take away guns. They say they're violent. But the same party is now saying, look, we want to highlight this moment of he was a carrier, lawful carrier, which is not a bad thing.
That is not only your right, it's your duty. We know that the potential to further inflame tensions is high. And to Minnesotans,
by the way, windows down, you say Dems aren't anti-gun, LOL. They want to remove the Second Amendment. We've heard what Kamala Harris has said. We've heard what many of these Democrats have said on interviews, in articles.
there's a difference. We want calm and peace and normalcy back to our lives. They want chaos. We cannot and we will not give them what they want by meeting violence with violence. Minnesota and our local law enforcement, as you have seen, have done everything possible to de-escalate. Local media has reported extensively on the cooperation to de-escalate this situation. Donald Trump, I call on you once again, remove this force from Minnesota. They are sowing chaos and violence. We've seen deadly violence from federal agents again and again and again. But in contrast to that, on these frozen streets, what you witnessed yesterday was the best of Minnesotans, peacefully exercising their First Amendment rights. And I attended in the church basement hundreds of Minnesotans from all faiths.
Okay, so look, I have a lot of chats that are saying Dems are not anti-gun. You're calling me a liar. What happened during all the times when you saw many of these trans shooters shooting up kids in schools? They began to blame the guns. They began to talk about guns. They began to talk and use this as a talking point. Go back to that moment in time where this is what they were parroting across the media, across social media. So you begin to get lost in the fog of war. So maybe I'm not fully understanding this correctly. And look, I am willing to be changed. I'm willing to have my mind changed on this matter. So instead of calling me a liar, how about you bring up the reasoning behind why the Democrats say, or those who have quoted that they don't want to get rid of guns? You can email me, freedom@equallyokeshow.com. The email is pinned in the chat. I highly encourage you to do so.
Care packages for families that have been ripped apart. Despite the horrific acts by this federal government, Minnesotans are standing up for the rule of law. They're protesting loudly and urgently, but peacefully. It must stay that way, Minnesota. Minnesotans are witnessing, and we're creating a log of evidence for the future prosecution of ICE agents and officials responsible for this. They're helping their neighbors. They're walking their kids to school. They're feeding families. I salute their courage and their restraint, and I call on all Americans to see the decency that this state is exhibiting and the horrific cruelty, unprofessional, absolute abomination that is passing for what these ICE agents are doing on our streets. They think they can provoke us into abandoning our values. Well, they're dead wrong. We'll keep the peace, we'll secure the justice with our neighbors, and we'll see this occupation ends.
And he's right. He says that they think they're going to get us to abandon our values. They're not going to. This may very well get worse than what it currently is now. Now, we're going to go into some of this footage here that is posted by Fox 9 Minneapolis, St. Paul. Now, I don't believe it's going to get to the moment of the actual shooting, but this is what the news is playing here, the clips that you've been seeing circulated online. Here we go.
You see his arms are kind of pinned right in front of him as he's on the ground. And then then you see the agent in the gray coat there who doesn't have a firearm in his hand reach around and pull out a firearm. So right here you see it looks like the man's, I think Mr. Pretty's arms are pinned down in front of him. So he's not reaching for his firearm. Both hands are right there. It's difficult to see what happens right in this second here, but
so look, this is a very chaotic scene. You have ICE officers surrounding the guy. They can't seem to restrain him properly. I don't know what is going on here. What is the type of communication that is happening here? There are some that are saying, look, some reporters that are saying this could have happened because the lack of communication between these ICE agents. Because one of them, you can clearly see one of the clips pulls out what would be his weapon from the back of his pants. And one of them apparently shouts gun and then begins firing. You can actually see in many of the other angles of him pulling out his gun and firing. Now, when you see the first moment of him pulling out his gun, what happens is you begin to see that the ICE agents sort of disperse. They all pull out their weapons, and who shoots, who knows? You can't see any muzzle flashes. You can't really see, other than the person who we believe shot first. from some of the video footage. If you also look at what is being showcased again on social media, some of the other images, some of the other imagery, let's take a look at this clip here. And look, I don't really see it. I don't see that there's him pulling out his firearm. Now, first of all, I hate the fact that we don't have good quality imagery of this incident. We have nothing but potato footage. Obviously, it's through the compression of these web servers as they get uploaded online. When you actually begin to see the original video files, you'd probably see that they're a lot more clear than what is being shown online. And so what happens is when you upload these videos online, a lot of the blurry footage begins to get interpreted in many different ways. People begin screenshotting, people begin circling different aspects of, what they're seeing online, what they believe they're seeing online. So here's a slow motion or slow down video that appears, according to this post, slow down video proves the armed man in Minneapolis began to draw his firearm before border agents took him to the ground. Self-defense, case closed, the left lied again, probably radicalized by Jacob Frey and Tim Waltz, FAFO. Now, I don't believe that to be true entirely. I don't know. There's cameras all over the place. So let's play this clip here. So from the looks of it, his jacket sort of swings around. Now, whether they believe that is his arm reaching from where they believe he had his gun, we were seeing reports online of people saying that he had maybe 2 firearms on him, but only DHS here in this post say at 9:05 a.m. As DHS law enforcement officers were conducting a targeted operation in Minneapolis against an illegal alien wanted for violent assault. So this is who they were after. And instead there was a casualty as a result of going after the violent assault. The illegal alien who committed the violent assault says an individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun seen here. The officers attempted to disarm the suspect, but the armed suspect violently resisted. More details on the armed struggle are forthcoming. Fearing for his life and the lives and the safety of fellow officers, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics on scene immediately delivered medical aid to the subject, but was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 magazines and no ID. This looks like a situation where an individual wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. About 200 rioters arrived at the scene and began to obstruct and assault law enforcement on the scene. Crowd control measures were deployed for the safety of the public and law enforcement. The situation is evolving and more information is forthcoming. Now, this is the weapon. Now, if you look back at the AP News outlet that we were reading earlier, it talks about this guy, Alex Preddy. Now, you begin to hear what, again, his father says in some of the conversations that they've had. So he says, Alex Jeffrey Preddy, 37, or this is the AP News article, says, was an avid outdoorsman. This is how they introduce him. Enjoyed getting in adventures with his leopard dog, who recently died. He worked for the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs and had participated in protests following the January 6th killing of Renee Good by an immigrant and customs officer. So he says he cared. This is the quote from his dad, Michael Preddy, saying he cared about people deeply and was very upset with what was happening in Minneapolis throughout the United States with ICE, as millions of other people were upset. Now, the key terms here is what Alex would have been saying or communicating with his father concerning the issues that he was seeing was he thought it was terrible, kidnapping children, just grabbing people off of the streets. He cared about those people and he knew it was wrong, so he did participate in protests. So it also makes sure to let the reader know that he was a U.S. citizen born in Illinois, Like good court records showed, he had no criminal record, and his family said he had never had any interactions with law enforcement beyond a handful of traffic tickets. Now it begins to say we had a discussion with him 2 weeks ago or so, that go ahead and protest, but do not engage, do not do anything stupid, basically, Michael Preddy said. Quote, and he said he knows that, he knew that, end quote. So they knew that he was going to go and continue on in protesting what he believed was to stand up for what was going on. Obviously to be on the opposition of the ICE agents. So you go down to the information that they begin to share concerning Alex Preddy. So they talk about his background. They talk about, the quote here says, the sickening lies about our son by the administration are reprehensible and disgusting. The family statement said, they added that the video showed Alex Preddy was not hiding, or holding a gun rather, when he was tackled by federal agents, but holding his phone with one hand and using the other to shield a woman who was being pepper sprayed. Now, on another video angle, you can see that he's holding, or he's trying to pull another woman, the woman in white with a red backpack or a pink backpack, for some odd reason. What was the case with this? We don't know. But it seemed like he was trying to hold her, restrain her. Nobody knows. You see two ICE agents that were kind of hanging back with her, while the other ICE agents went to put him down to the ground, pin him down, try to do whatever they were trying to do, apprehend him, whatever the case is. They then begin to say, please get the truth out about our son. He was a good man. And then they go on in his background saying Alex Preddy grew up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, where he played football, baseball, and ran track. Talking about his achievements, his accomplishments, how he began to, return to school and become a registered nurse. But then it gives this little portion to his ex-wife, who spoke to the AP and later said that she didn't want her name used, saying that she was not surprised that he would have been involved in protesting Trump's immigration crackdown. She said she had not spoken to him since they divorced more than 2 years ago, and she moved to another state. She said that he was a Democratic voter and that he had participated in the Wave Streets protest following the killing of George Floyd by a Minneapolis police officer in 2020, not far from the couple's neighborhood. She described him as someone who might shout at law enforcement officers at a protest, but she had never known him to be physically confrontational. She said Preddy got a permit to carry a concealed firearm about 3 years ago, and that he owned at least one semi-automatic handgun before when they separated, rather. Then it goes on to say that he had a great heart. They go on about his passion for outdoors. So look, this little mini section here tells us a lot as to sort of what began to happen to Alex Preddy following the George Floyd protest. We saw that the George Floyd protest, there was nothing peaceful about George Floyd protests. They were indeed violent. We saw cars burning. We saw buildings burning. We saw the mayor and the governor completely allow this to happen. So what is all this about? Okay. When I said that I wanted to use Marx as an example, this is important because the way they said they would establish democracy, Marx says this rather, in his book, The Communist Manifesto, said democracy is to rest. And the word rest there, W-R-E-S-T, is by to forcibly pull away, seize, or take something from someone by force or violent struggle. The quote here is, the proletariat will use its political supremacy to wrest by degrees, all capital, from the bourgeoisie, to centralize all instruments of production in the hands of the state. In other words, of the proletariat organized as the ruling class, and the increase the total of productive forces as rapidly as possible. This is the conclusion that Marx brings to this use of force is being said here, right? So here's the quote. It says, the communists disdain to conceal their views and aims. They openly declare that their ends can be attained only by the forcibly by the forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions, let the ruling class tremble at a communistic revolution. The proletarians have nothing to lose but their chains. They have a world to win. Working men of all countries unite. This is a quote from the Marxist communist playbook. So when the Democrats talk about seizing this moment, or so when we talk about on the show of seizing this moment only for political gains, they will seize this moment. In the same manner that they use Renee Good, in the same manner that they will use anybody who loses their life for the sake of protecting who ICE seeks to arrest. But here are my thoughts concerning all of this. What do I think concerning this narrative that will still be used for the cause of their revolution against law enforcement? The words that are being tossed around, such as public execution. This is not a public execution. This is law enforcement doing their job in order to remove the illegal aliens that have committed crimes, and the crimes in which they are seeking to go after based on a threshold, if there is a threshold. According to Donald Trump, what we mentioned earlier is that there was who they are targeting. So the law enforcement is making a split-second decision here on a potentially dangerous man. Reports say that he had no identification on him and was later identified by the medical examiner and later confirmed by his parents. Now, should we believe that his parents are being true? Should we believe that his parents are being 100% and that he is a good person? Sure, I think we can on a surface level. But considering some of the quotes from the AP article, again, he cared about people deeply. Talking about the kidnappings. We saw what happened with the child. What happened and what was debunked by the ICE agents, by the DHS, by Kristi Noem, by JD Vance, that this kid was taken care of. He was not kidnapped. They're not just grabbing people off the streets. Who are they targeting? They're targeting violent criminals. And this is who Democrats are protecting. So his own wife knew about the involvement, but they emphasize part of his other background, where they begin to list all of his good deeds. Only a small portion of the article mentions this moment, but doesn't go into the details behind the protest involvement. From what we know about George Floyd, the George Floyd riots, there's, from that point on, where this radicalization of this guy, Alex Preddy, begins to take place. And so we also have the Arizona AG saying things like this, because this is also going to cause people to potentially begin to use lethal force against ICE agents. People are saying this is stoking a civil war. Let's take a look at this clip.
It's kind of a recipe for disaster because you have these masked federal officers with very little identification, sometimes no identification, wearing plain clothes and masks. And we have a stand your ground law that says that if you reasonably believe that your life is in danger and you're in your house or your car or on your property, that you can defend yourself with lethal force.
In other words, shoot ICE officers. What do you make of those remarks, Chad?
It just grossly irresponsible. I can't believe that she's, frankly, an adult, much less anyone of any.
Now, by the way, prior to this clip here that you just saw, talking about, I believe it's a stand. What's the Stand Your Ground Act? I think that's what it's called in Arizona, where essentially there's a sort of way that she's using this to communicate her point concerning the fact that there might be in a moment where if ICE comes to Arizona or in any other country that wants to, or any other state that wants to implement this, that they may be using lethal force against ICE agents. Now, in the poll that we mentioned here, do you think ICE agents should wear masks? Now, of course, both sides of the aisle can have, one talking point versus another, saying that ICE agents shouldn't have masks because they are law enforcement and they shouldn't, sort of protect their identity. This is what they signed up for. And I get that aspect. But then there's the other aspect that says, look, their family, their lives are being doxxed. Their lives are being threatened. Now, look, whether you lean on either side, I want you guys to vote in the poll. I want to know what you guys' thoughts concerning this. So, as we continue on here with some of the clips, let's look at some of what we're seeing on the ground here.
There is an incredibly volatile scene in South Minneapolis right now, and the extent of communication with law enforcement agencies. We have established a command post that is led by Minneapolis Police, and there are representatives from all of the regional, local, county, and state organizations. We have had communication with Homeland Security, but they have not been able to provide us any specific details around the incident itself. We are responsible for ensuring the safety of people on the streets of our city, and we are doing everything that we can to maintain the peace right now, led by Minneapolis Police, but with the help of the Minnesota State Patrol, Hennepin and Ramsey County Sheriffs. Several suburban towns are in the city helping us with 911 calls.
So here's the deal here. First of all, they're saying that they are trying to protect their citizens. Okay, what's the case with this? Do you see any police officers on the scene? You generally have not seen any of them on the scene, only ICE agents. So the fact that they're saying that they are there to protect citizens, that they're there to sort of mitigate situations, they're not. You haven't seen this in any of the videos, any of the video clips that you've been seeing online. And so for somebody also saying in the chat, like, look, notice it's all Fox News. We're taking the clips that they are putting on Fox News. However, this is, of course, the broadcast of the police chief mentioned this. Is there any commentary from Fox News? We did play a little bit from the last clip. I let that kind of go on while I adjusted something on my settings here. However, we also saw some of the footage here. So yeah, you might hear commentary, but I am providing my own commentary concerning this matter. So despite the fact that I'm showing Fox News clips, a lot of this stuff is more safe to use online for YouTube purposes, because if you show some of the other stuff, it may be removed. So in the case of using news outlets, this is somewhat the safest way to go. Not necessarily Fox, but we've been reporting more than just Fox. Notice we've been reporting the AP. We've been reporting Politico. We've been reporting a lot of other outlets other than Fox. We're also reporting Fox News in Minneapolis because they're also covering this stuff, not necessarily right-leaning in Minneapolis. However, they're covering this because, and I think they're blowing up on social media, on YouTube more specifically, because this is the news outlet in that area that is sort of gaining a lot of traction. So the situations here that are unfolding on this, we look at some of the posts online. Let's continue on with some of the X posts regarding this matter. So I want to know your thoughts. Email me what you're thinking concerning this matter. freedomedequallyoshow.com. This is Kamala Harris saying Alex Jeffrey Preddy was an ICU nurse at the VA hospital. His life, through his profession, was dedicated to serving his community and our country, which I don't think I have any doubts about that. As so many have now seen on video, his final act before he was killed by federal agents was doing everything in his power to protect his community. I mean, what does she mean by that? What is Kamala Harris, the cackler, talking about when she says in his final act that he was doing everything in his power to protect his community? Who was he protecting? When he's forcibly grabbing some woman by the back of her shirt or jacket, whatever she's wearing, it almost seems like he's trying to, I don't know. I'm not going to incite anything here. I don't know what is going on with why he was grabbing this woman. Didn't seem like he was trying to protect her. Seemed like she was trying to get away. Alex and tens of thousands of Minnesotans have boldly defended their neighbors against the murderous occupation of an American city by the federal government. Again, more rhetoric. I am enraged and heartbroken for Alex, his family, Minneapolis, and America. This is indeed not in America that we're happy to see because of the ruthlessness that is happening from people protecting fraudulent activity. So, again, when you look at all these other posts here, you see people that are going to the internet to figure out what exactly was in his hand. So you see all these video clips of him pulling out, whatever he's pulling out. You're seeing other people on the other side showing the officer who pulled out his weapon. People calling for the video footage of the woman in pink, which this is probably her footage here, maybe. So this is what we're seeing. We're seeing all of this stuff online. And so when we continue on here with some of the articles, there was something that I wanted to mention here. Let's see. There's a quote here saying, this is not normal. Yesterday, more than 50,000 Minneapolis residents joined a peaceful general strike against the authoritarian overreach. And today, federal agents shot and killed yet another human being on the streets. Jacob Thomas, Common Defense Communications Director, Air Force veteran, and Minneapolis resident. The 50,000 Minneapolis residents that are there peacefully, yet there's a few that are acting as agitators. Whether it's the few or whether it's the majority that are acting as agitators with these types of, instruments or whatever they're utilizing in order to cause and sow confusion, to disorient. This is not normal. And so when it comes to what we're seeing in America, this is a deeply spiritual war. It's ultimately, that's what it is. This is the manifestation of the spiritual into the natural. We're witnessing the playbook, the play-by-play of Satan utilizing his deception, utilizing his gains, utilizing his power in order to deceive the people. And what we see in Scripture reversing the order of good and evil, where they call evil good and they call good evil. The wicked rulers who are allied, or rather, the question that is imposed here says, can wicked rulers be allied with you, those who frame injustice by law? They band together against the life of the righteous and condemn the innocent to death. This is the party of the left. This is what we saw with Charlie Kirk. So we're seeing so much of this begin to unfold, and the information that is coming out day by day, whether one side of the aisle, the left or the right, one side, it's like there's a sort of battle going on online. People that are witnessing this outside of Minneapolis, outside of Minnesota. When you go down to the deep root of all of this, this is essentially all about fraud. This is essentially all about the fact that this is Donald Trump utilizing his power in order to conduct operations, in order to send ICE agents in order to fulfill and to, what's the word I'm looking for, to enforce the law. Just analyzing your comments here. There is not. It's synthetic accounts pushing Trump talking points. I think many say with the leftists that comment here, we don't know who's a bot. I think for me, what I can discern from those that actually have common sense in the chat, that's not from bots. It's clear common sense. AI can't, AI is not going to give you common sense. XD, you say people should try to work for ICE and not wear a mask. Invasion by settlement destroyed the Roman Empire. I think what's interesting concerning this is that I think you should put yourself in the shoes of law enforcement. When you have, and by the way, thank you for your super chat. Appreciate your comment. And I think it puts it into perspective that when we're looking at these ICE officers who are conducting their job, this is their job after all. They're there to fulfill a mandate by the president who is enforcing the law. This is the law of America. They are breaking laws, and what ICE seeks to do concerning these people that they're targeting, the immigrants, the illegal immigrants, is removing them as they're told to do. And we're having the people in power, such as Tim Walz, Kamala Harris, Jacob Frey. What are they saying? They're saying that they are terrorists. The left is calling them Nazis. They're saying that they are causing harm to Americans. Is that what they're seeking to do? What is their responsibility? Their responsibility is to enforce the law. The president's responsibility is to enforce the law. The president's responsibility is to make America first. And then when we begin to put America first, people begin to become upset by the way that it's being done, when these are the laws in place in order to get it done. And when you read further on in that article that we just read in the U.S. Constitution, Article 4, Section 4, at the very last part of it, it says, let me read the whole thing from the start. The United States shall guarantee every state in this union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion and on application of the legislature or of the executive when the legislature cannot be convened against domestic violence. What branch is Donald Trump a part of? Because it begins to say, we'll read it again, and shall protect each of them against invasion and on application of the legislature or of the executive, and then in the parentheses, when the legislature cannot be convened against domestic violence. This is domestic violence. What we're seeing here in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, is domestic violence. This is what it is. And so what they're protecting is protecting frauds. They're protecting those who break the law. Can we all agree that breaking the law is wrong? Or do we need to, what do we need to do here to understand that this is a complete upside down of what reality actually is? You go and do this in any other country, in most cases, they kill these people. They don't have the right to protest in many cases. We see this in Iran. We see a regime that is in power of those on the left who want a regime in power. They want their political gods, their political idols to be in power, such as Barack Obama, such as Joe Biden, such as Kamala Harris, such as Tim Walz. I mean, America dodged a terrible presidency if Kamala Harris indeed won. You see the fraud in Minneapolis, and nobody's talking about this. Nobody's talking about the bullet that we dodged with these two. That illegal immigration would have ran rampant. Policies and laws would be removed in order to, the laws that are removed to keep America safe, to keep the borders closed, they would have only allowed more ability for this to happen. So we're just kind of riffing here. We're just kind of talking concerning the comments that are coming in. So we have to put ourselves in the perspective of, yes, of course, the law enforcement, you guys might not want to do that because you don't want to put yourself in situations like that. We're conducting your operations to enforce the law. But they are in tremendous environments, tremendous violence under these circumstances and these environments. And what the Democrats seek to do is to continue their rhetoric, to continue their talking points in order to lead the sheep to the slaughter. This is only causing more and more people to die. That's the reality of it. And it's sad because these people are dying for a cause that they will not win until they indeed elect their own person in power. So first of all, you're saying you're a bad guy spreading hella propaganda for fascist government. What propaganda am I spreading? Mention it here. Because a lot of people that are saying I'm a grifter or a drifter or a liar or a coward, a hypocrite, fake Christian, highest order, you have no other talking points other than to just say names and call out the rhetoric. They just say you're a bad guy. There's no debate by just saying these simple phrases. The reality is that this is all politics, because when you begin to look at both of the sides, yeah, I can say that I hold more to conservative values, but the only thing that really separates me from conservatism or republicanism, however you want to pull it, however you want to side with the story, is that God is the one that holds the ultimate truth. We can try to believe in politicians all we want. We want to try to trust in the fact that politicians, to a certain extent, that they will, help us in the long run, in the sense that we are hoping that Donald Trump puts America first and continues to make America great again because of his campaign promises. But isn't this what it's all about with politics in general? Trump is by far the only president that has actually done what he said he would do. And even though these things are radical in the things that he says he would do according to the left, when really it's just following the law, people don't like it with the way that it's being done. And by the way, you got the scripture wrong about honoring your neighbor. The scripture is loving your neighbor. There's a big difference. You don't honor your neighbor. You credit to yourself. Love thy neighbor. Sorry. Look, somebody says here 12 million in 4 years is ridiculous. Let everyone in at once. Don't have them go to court ever. If no people come in, they need to go to court and all that stuff. We need to actually get these people. Not sure where your sentence finishes off. You say they lied to us about the border. They tried to hide the fact that immigrants were just walking in across the border, 5,000 to 8,000 a day. We saw all the video footage. online. We saw the lack of news coverage that was being shared. They turned a blind eye. They turned a blind eye to what was actually happening, and it was the fact that they were giving money to anybody who came across the border. They gave them a cell phone. They gave them a place to stay. They started to remove American citizens, American children, because they say they're all about children. They start to remove, the Democrat side that is, remove American children from schools in order to place the illegal immigrants who come into the country under the Joe Biden administration. So you have an influx of immigration. You begin to import the third world. You become the third world. Where are you going to house all of them? How are you going to feed all of them? What is going to begin to happen when you have all of these immigrants that come into the country under the Joe Biden administration go straight immediately to welfare? You begin to cost the American taxpayer money. And people will then tout all day long, I'm willing to help my neighbor. I'm willing to help the immigrant. I'm willing to help the foreigner in the land. But in reality, your life does not look like that at all. That all you want to do is say this online because it protects you from actually doing it in real life. So if indeed you want to help these people, why not give them a place to stay in your own home? Why not give them a room? Be like the person that you tout to be online and actually go and love them, provide for them, be their sponsor, whatever the case is. Jody, you say immigrants work harder than natural born citizens. You can try to, you can try to cut this one way or another. Would we say that Ilhan Omar works harder than natural born citizens? She worked really hard at obtaining her money, probably by fraudulent activity. I mean, how realistic can we look at her income and say, yeah, in the course of a couple of years, she's at $30 million. So this is what the probe that they're looking into. We're going to see exactly how this money came about to be. We see this. Look, you can try to put it, cut it one way and say, well, maybe she just knows how to work her finances. Okay, what was happening in the state in which she's representing? Fraud. But what more specifically, what group of fraud is committing this? Or what group of people is committing this type of fraud? The Somalian population. Who is Ilhan Omar? Ilhan Omar is Somali. And by the way, we have an email here. It says, hey, brother in Christ, love your show and subscribe. Please check out this interview from the 80s by former KGB agent Yuri Bezmenov, which I've watched that. We've actually gone over this on an earlier broadcast from when we started to do this show, talking about these 45 communist points in order to take over America. Fascinating. We looked at this before. And so I appreciate that. Maybe we need to go and we revisit this at another time. But you say he discloses the tactic of KGB decided to employ ideological subversion. The consequence is a breakdown in literally all our institutions, while simultaneously replacing those institutions with Marxist ideological institutions, DEI. Please watch this video. It explains everything we're witnessing. The revolution is here, I'm afraid. I think you're right. Whether the American people know it or not, the ones who have gone to college in order to help to understand, they're there to be, honestly, what college begins to happen is you begin to get indoctrinated by these leftist professors who've been embedded for a long time, that if they begin to spiel this nonsense, the hatred towards America, the fact that they begin to tout the 1617 project, you begin to get away from the fundamental truths of the founding of America. when you begin to believe these lies. So, guys, with all that we saw here today, is what we're witnessing here. We're going to conclude this poll here because an overwhelming, I wouldn't say overwhelming, it's 6% more. Somebody said here on the chat, they started restricting, not letting white women leave the country. This makes me nervous. I'm not sure what you're talking about, Sprinkle. What are you mentioning there? I was not sure why that caught my eye. It says, you realize you're not white and this regime hates you. Not sure if that's in regards to another comment. I don't know. Do you think ICE agents should wear masks? The votes there are complete at 249 votes. 56% of you say no. 44% of you say yes. So there's sort of almost a mixed bag there. And so when somebody's asking, can you describe DEI, which means diversity, equity, and inclusion, you can actually see with policies within your own company, if you actually look into your company portals, if you ever are able to do that within your job and wherever you work, actually, the job that I work for follows these DEI practices. You begin to see it also in the ways of training. Without spilling details on this, I don't know if I can even share that, but otherwise, you say they are not letting white women leave the country any longer. So when we're talking about DEI, we've done this on another broadcast concerning DEI. We could do this at another show if we want to. Am I a DEI hire then? No, I'm not a DEI hire. DEI hire from my job. Look, I used to hire people for when I worked back in retail. And when we look at what DEI seeks to do, and when you begin to look at we have to go back to even the Equal Employment Opportunity Act. We have to begin to look at the, what's the other one that is called? Affirmative action. We begin to look at these social constructs, these social ideas of, and how it is implemented with companies, how it is implemented when people begin to hire people, when people begin to hire employees for their company, such as when I went to go and seek applicants for a specific job, did I seek to hire them based on their color of their skin, based on the fact that if they were a minority, based on the fact if they were a person of color? We hired them based on merit, or if they could do the job. It was as simple as that. But when you begin to see DEI in practice, what does it actually do? Because you can have the definition of DEI and what it actually says it intends to do, but then you begin to see companies that hire folks, such as what happened in New York. You begin to see people who are not qualified for the job begin to be hired for the job. In the case of somebody who had experience as an EMT or EMS rather, and not a firefighter, being hired as the chief firefighter for the FDNYC. Then you have what happened in Austin, Texas. We looked at that story not too long ago. That he didn't know something as simple as reimbursement. A simple term of reimbursement that he could not move forward with a certain procedure that they wanted to do in order to help or aid Austin, Texas, in order to prevent more disaster from coming, from happening, from disaster from what we saw there. I'm trying to think back as to the details of this because this was quite a while ago. I'm not sure if you guys remember. And so somebody asked him about reimbursement, and he didn't seem to understand the concept. We also saw the case of the United Air CEO who said that we are looking for 50%. This is our quota for 50% minority and people of color to become a part of our program. Air traffic controllers, pilots. This is when all this broke out and went viral when Charlie Kirk talked about these black pilots, and people begin to take the context. They begin to actually remove all the context and try to create a narrative surrounding these black pilots on Charlie Kirk being, quote unquote, racist. So DEI in practice, when you're looking at affirmative action, when you're looking at the equal employment opportunities, just go and take a look at yourself, or take a look at your company. If you work with a company that employs these training mechanisms, see if you can find on their homepage what it talks about concerning this matter. And I think I even screenshotted something here. I took a picture of it. Now, without trying to share some details, let me see if I can find it here for a moment, because I thought it was interesting to share in the case that this topic ever came up. Let's see if I can find it here. Wait a moment, guys. And if you're still in this podcast, I appreciate you guys for sticking with me. And despite some of the negative comments, I do appreciate your candor. I do appreciate your, I appreciate you guys commenting to just put in your perspective, so long as it's, not just saying ugly things. But otherwise, we're looking at an America that is completely divided. And something that, again, Christ says concerning the matters is what we're going to see in the last days is kingdoms against kingdoms, nations against nations. The word for nation is ethnos. We've looked at that term before. Ethnos is ethnicities, the Greek word that is used there. So ethnicities against ethnicities. Interesting. We're talking about wars and rumors of wars. I'm looking for this image that I took of the DEI policies that I was reading, and I found it funny that I eventually wanted to share with my audience here. So maybe I'll play something so that I'm not too boring on this broadcast, so you guys can actually look at while I'm looking for this. And we'll, I think it's going to be important to look at what the Minneapolis the police chief is saying concerning some of this stuff following the events, and just to get an idea more as to what is being said on the left.
We have done an emergency recall of all sworn personnel back to duty. And we are working with the fire department right now to ensure that 2 small fires that were started in the area are safely extinguished. But again, we need everyone to avoid the area if possible. And the people who are in the area, we understand your frustrations. This is not sustainable. But we need people to leave the area at this time. We have communicated with the National Guard. They have been on standby for several days, and we have ensured the National Guard, as well as all of the local law enforcement partners, are aware of the situation.
Chief and Mayor, if I can ask you, this is a statement from Tricia McLaughlin, spokesperson from DHS. She said in her statement, an individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. Seen here, they showed a picture of it. The officers attempted to disarm the suspect, but the armed suspect violently resisted. More details on the armed struggle are forthcoming. Fearing for his life and the lives and safety of fellow officers, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics on the scene immediately delivered medical aid. Is that what happened?
So Minneapolis police, the question was, you read a statement from DHS saying that a weapon was presented and there was attempts to disarm the person. Again, like I stated earlier, Minneapolis police, as well as our supervisors, our watch commander, responded to the scene. We were not provided any public safety statement around the incident, what happened. We have since seen a video that is circulating online, like thousands of other people have at this time. So we do not know what happened prior to the recording that is online right now. I immediately called for the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension to respond, to conduct an investigation. They are.
Seems like the audio cut out. Not sure what is going on there. Let's see here. I'm trying to find.
Okay, I think we lost the shot here. This is in Minneapolis, a press conference with the police.
So I'm trying to look for the DEI policy here that I found kind of hilarious. Bear with me here, guys. Look, it might take a moment to find here. So I'm just looking through to see where this might be. Let's see here. Yeah, this is going to be a little rough to find. I might have to just show you at another time because I don't even know at what point I took this. I do know it was when I was doing retraining at my job because we have to do this yearly, as many of you probably have to do. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to find that. I'm just trying to do some search words. So guys, look, you guys can continue to email me your thoughts, freedom@equallyyokeshow.com. I also want to mention that your support to the show by subscribing, by super chats, all of that stuff is very welcomed here. We want to grow this channel in order to provide you with the best possible coverage of what we're seeing here. And your guys' support is most certainly welcomed, and it's great. It really is. It helps bring this channel to where we want it to be, which is to be better format, better production, better value from watching and listening. I would like to obviously, do more content by posting these on audio podcasts, a lot of other stuff that I can do solo, but the lack of time that I have, being that I have a job also, is I just don't focus my full attention on this other than what I can during the day that we broadcast. So like I said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to find this. However, oh, here we go. I think I found it. Here we go. Let's see here. So these are just some of the practices. Hopefully I'm not giving up too much information here. Let's see here. Talking about office gossip. Again, this follows in with the line of equity and inclusion, rather more leaning towards the inclusionary side. Gosh, I don't even know if I can read this because obviously this is sensitive information. It's probably better not read it in general. But anyway, so the scenario here is somebody being trans, and the statement of used to be a man is not accurate. This is the training, because you're having to go through these training scenarios with the job, and it's teaching you the correct responses concerning what you're supposed to say in these issues. This is DEI practice at work. And so when you begin to look at the definitions, you can say, well, all of this seems very well. Interesting. So those are my thoughts concerning that. We'll probably tackle it on another podcast. The important aspects of everything that we're witnessing today in Minnesota and California that will begin soon. What we've also seen, and we're going to cover this on probably tomorrow's broadcast, or actually today, it's 12:21 a.m. here, with some of the back and forth with the exchange in Congress during the hearings of the Epstein files, or some of the releasing of the Epstein files and what is supposed to happen there by Chairman James Comer. Bill and Hillary Clinton being held in contempt. There's so much information here that is coming out, and there's like this focus of Minnesota that is almost trumping the whatever coverage that we're seeing of everything, anything else. And the media is being very selective about this. So somebody says here, this is Crumble Chief, you're obviously being removed here because you've been repeating the same statement, but you say diversity, not having a company being populated by the same people as they do reduce in value of opinion, offer, and fail to access markets. So you're forcibly removing the potential of possibly removing applicants just because they're the same people. What do you mean by same people, first of all? Do you mean same race? Yes. Yeah. Go ahead. No. That's no. Not at all. Okay. So you're probably using that language because you're probably talking about white people, or you're talking about a specific type of race. Diversity. If they're qualified, doesn't matter their race, doesn't matter their color. It's based on merit. If they can do the job, even if the people are all white, even if the people are all Asian, even if the people are all black, the reality is you should have people who are qualified to do the job, not just implement diversity for the sake of having different people. All over the Biden administration, we saw, we have to look back at the names. Bro, do you realize we live in a day and age where this is a thing that when the Democrats begin to bring this up and they begin to make this all about race, sure, we have instances of racism, and we can go and, try to break down every point, concerning whatever you're referring to. And you're talking about the fact that I don't have, that I'm ignoring history. Yeah, this used to happen. There used to be a moment in time in American history where there was segregation. So it's like you begin to bring up these points and you forget that we live in a modern world, especially they've begun to go so far as to make sure they implement diversity, to make sure they implement these issues so that you're hearing more rhetoric about the white man. Ilhan Omar talking about this thing. We've played this clip before where she says you should really be afraid of the white man. Like, what does race have anything to do with this? And so you begin to bring race into this. So it's not like racism is completely eradicated, but you know what the Democrats always do? They begin to bring race into the picture. Race always is one of the deciding factors here. It's always about race. It's racism this, racism that. I think I have the audio file of Ilhan Omar saying, racist, bigot. Let's see if this.
He's always been a racist, a bigot, a xenophobic, and Islamophobic.
Referring to Donald Trump. But since when does enforcing the law involve racism? The law is impartial here. This is why Lady Justice has a blindfold on. There's no partiality when it comes to judging the person based on the law. So you're reading, you're making an argument from silence here. Only racist people care about color. You're right, Deadman. But hey, no all caps. So I'm going to end the broadcast here. Please feel free to email the show, freedom@equallyokeshow.com. Continue to, I'm going to let this chat go on a little bit longer. And so, by the way, Crumble Chief, you say diversity is not enforced. It is a corporate publicity. You still got it wrong. You're obsessed with race, but diversity is not about race. Dude, the deeper that we go into this, the more you're going to prove yourself to be wrong. The deeper we go into this, the more you're going to prove yourself to be wrong. It's just inevitable when you begin to see people with a mindset where they try policy. Okay, I'm not sure. You're correcting yourself there. The policy. You're saying it's a corporate policy. Yet if you don't follow these policies, what happens? It begins to get enforced. Like, do you realize? It's always about race. And so you can try to point out racism in this podcast, you're not going to find any. It's not about the fact that Somalis are a specific color. It's not about the fact of any of that. It's simply about the fraud that they're committing. And even if it were Americans committing fraud, we're talking about the Americans who are impeding law enforcement. This is breaking the law. There's no partiality in that. It's wrong. And so the fact that you're going to continue to use this idea about racism. So, okay, then we can go in deeper, a little bit deeper. You say that's what policies are, but it's not illegal. What happens if you break these policies? People can take legal action against the individual who's breaking the policy. So you're beginning to contradict yourself. You're saying statements that you don't understand. And you become to make yourself look like the fool. It's so stupid how this begins to unfold when companies begin to implement diversity into their company, into their hiring practices. You begin to see again, when diversity, equity, and inclusion is in practice, it just falls short. So where's the hope, the hypocrisy, bold as a lion? Since you're so bold as a lion to say there's so much hypocrisy, where's the level of hypocrisy here? You say you can get sacked as terms of your employment. Yes, but the individual who believed that some type of issue when it comes to these policies that are implemented can be taken to can be held on account of the laws in this state, such as California, that has all of these leftist radical policies that are implemented that can be taken to court, and you can then be forced to pay fines. You can be forced to the likes of much damage to you. And you say, if Trump cares about fraud, why is he pardoning criminals? Now, these pardons were referred to him by many people as to why they should be pardoned. He has the sole responsibility to, or the, not the sole responsibility to, he has the ability to pardon anybody he so chooses to pardon. But go into more in detail as to why these people are frauds. Look at both sides. Don't just look at one side of the aisle, because then you're echoing your own chamber, or you're following in your own echo chamber of only listening to what the left is saying. Now, why he chooses to pardon people, that's his prerogative. He's the president. He can do it. Whether they are actually fraudulent, they should still be held to on account of the law. So what's the problem here? Fraud is bad. Why he chose to pardon them, he can defend himself. If they committed fraud, as I said earlier, with the Americans in California, if they committed fraud, they should be held to account of the law. So what's the problem here? What's the matter? Because you say hypocrisy, hypocrisy, hypocrisy. But then when I begin to say, what? You don't even see my point. So then what is your point if I don't see it so clearly? So let's look on the other side of the aisle. Let's look at what what Biden did just before he removed himself, just before he lost the presidency, I should say. You say you're not left or right, yet your very own talking points are very leftist talking points. Okay, so if I missed your point, you're not going to explain the fact that you apparently I missed your point, so clearly you had no point to begin with in the first place. So okay. So this is why you're talking to a wall at this point. They're going to continue to spill their rhetoric, and it's honestly disgusting. So who did Biden pardon? Who did Biden pardon? Pardoned his own family? He pardoned the January 6th committee? How about you go talk about that? Talk about your own party. Look at your own party. Look into your own party and actually call out the nonsense and the nastiness that became about under the Biden administration. Yet you won't. You will not. At least you can say Biden is trash too. At least you can be honest here. I've said this time and time again. Politicians lie all the time. Media lies all the time. How about you go do the research on both sides, figure out, come to a conclusion, figure out whether or not it was actually fraud. We can look into that on another podcast. These are just not the things that we are looking into at the moment because of the amount of news that is coming out that does have some incredible weight to it behind of what we're seeing in America. How this is shaping up to be really an incredible time in history, where this all sort of begins to either turn around, for the better, or we're going to continue to see a destruction of America, of which the left wants. So, however you want to cut it, you guys are still repeating the same leftist lies instead of being impartial with your comments. So, subscribe to the podcast. Guys, come back to the show for tomorrow as we cover more of some of the other things that we're going to be looking at concerning the Epstein the congressional hearing regarding some of this stuff. There's some heated debates going on, and some of the comments that are being made by James Comer, by some of the Democrats on the left, some of the Democrats in California. It's all a game that is being played here, and we want to make sure that we're looking through the lies of what is being shown, just to sort of make people think one way or another. So join me for the next podcast tomorrow, possibly, Lord willing, and we'll be covering more of that stuff, hopefully. Unless, of course, there's other breaking news, and we will begin to cover whatever it is that we need to cover. So I'll see you guys in the next one. I'll let the chat open for a little bit longer, and you guys continue to go for it and discuss and debate all that stuff. See you guys in the next one. Peace.